Good evening, everyone. I hope you are all well. Since the end of the election, I have been actively campaigning for the Reform Party to democratise. To, I can say, mixed response. I actually made a video last week, and on Facebook, it's currently had a few thousand views, and there has been a wide range of responses. And basically, the responses can be defined into three different groups. There have been supporters, appeasers, and objectors. But firstly, I need to explain what my reasoning is because some of the comments don't actually correlate to my reasons for arguing to democratize the party. So, for those of you who don't agree, or for those of you who have made quite toxic allegations, for example, here's one a little while ago from Karen: why are you causing disruption? Fifth columnist. I'll come back to that in a little while. So, the status of all of the parliamentary candidates at the end of the election was as follows: they are no longer candidates. They are actually nothing at all. They have no legal status, no mandate whatsoever. And I can tell you for a fact, the vast majority of candidates finance their own campaigns, and I know candidates who spent between £5,000 and £10,000 of their own money on the campaign. That is how much we all supported reform. And because of the structure of the party, unlike the other main two parties, I have had somebody mention the Lib Dems, but I don't count them. I don't class them as a party. I believe that when they sold their soul in 2010, there were always just a confusion in the middle. But from 2010, they do not even warrant a mention from me. So I don't care what the Lib Dems do. But the other two parties, the candidates, like the local candidate for the Conservative Party, when the previous MP decided he wasn't going to stand, a new candidate was elected by the local Conservative members to be the duly elected candidate for the Conservatives in Northampton North. And once the election is over, that position doesn't change. He continues to be the candidate for the Conservatives up to and including the next election or by-election, whichever the case may be. But for the rest of us, that is not the case. So for those of you who argue against it, you're actually saying that these hundreds of people that have invested their time and money and stood up to fight for reform, and I can say that for many of us, it was a fight stepping out on the ledge on our own with nobody there to support us. When I say nobody there to support us, in other words, we didn't have the open support of prominent people. We had to fight the fight ourselves and literally start from a standing start. But at the end of the election, we're then told we're no longer candidates and we need to reapply again. And that's how it is. Well, no, that is not how it is. It was always understood that the party was going to democratise. You may have indeed heard Ben Habib say exactly the same thing on the record on GB News just in this last week, amongst other places. And this is all about the election of the candidates. It is my opinion that what we now have 70,000 members, but they're not members, they're supporters, because they've paid a fee, got a certificate, but they have no voice within the party. I am of the opinion that every single paid up supporter should have a voice and a vote, and they should all be divided up into their respective constituencies, so that the area managers, assuming that the area manager is somebody who's actually active and competent and wants to pull their finger out and do things, should arrange monthly meetings. We don't need to rent or buy buildings. We can share a social club or something along those lines, which could also be our local party office. And as soon as is humanly possible, then those members should be invited to then elect the candidate for their constituency. Now, in that event, myself, I would be happy to stand, but I wouldn't want to stand if I were the only candidate. I don't want to be the default candidate. I want to stand where there are several others and we all make our case, and the local members select and elect the candidate of their choice so that the best person becomes the candidate for this constituency. And in that regard, if it were done fairly, whoever would be the candidate, I would support them. The reason being is that we are wasting time because we have hundreds of candidates who actually don't know where they stand. They're in limbo. I'm watching them gradually fizzle out. And at a time where we should be all over this horrendous government like a bad suit, we are actually dwindling away because nobody knows where they stand and what they are doing. So this argument of just keep the peace and just don't say anything is the most destructive option that could possibly be taken, because if we leave it weeks and months, then many of the candidates who stood before will have fizzled out. They'll have lost contact or regular contact and momentum with their local supporters, and the effect will be muted. We need to have elected candidates now who have the mandate of their local voters, supporters, not somebody who's just put in place by an area or regional manager and can be elected or deselected for personal reasons or any other reason. Each candidate must be elected and voted in by the local members. And as far as I'm concerned, if people have gone to the trouble to pay to support the party, then I believe that they deserve a vote. And provided it is all done democratically, then we could elect candidates for each constituency as soon as possible. And that way, the candidate could then build up his connection with his voters, supporters, and the community as a whole from now. We mustn't leave it weeks or months before we actually begin to think about doing this. I'm in favour of complete democracy in every form. And ultimately, looking further afield, democracy is there are several forms of democracy. There is direct democracy, which may well be an option where people have the greatest voice, but it's not practical because people cannot realistically have a say or vote on every issue, which is why we elect representatives, and that is representative democracy, where we elect someone and that person allegedly stands for the interests of his or her voters. But as you and I know, for the main part, that is the last thing that they do. The candidate here in Northampton North voted to invade Iraq, for example. I've yet to come across a single person in Northampton North who supported invading Iraq. There are many, many other issues that I know the masses did not want that, but their local representative ignored them completely. That is something that is fundamentally wrong with representative democracy. But we have something that's even more sinister in the horizon, and it's actually happening already in different parts of the country. And that is, how does a government give people the ability and the right or the appearance of a democratic vote, but control the outcome of that vote or influence it by changing the demographics of the people one way or another? We know since Blair's time, he has been pandering to certain parts of of society and encouraging more of them to come because he knew that most of these people would vote Labour. He was importing Labour members. So effectively, by manipulating the demographic makeup, then that is a misrepresentative democracy, because the people in the society are being manipulated in different parts by numbers of people who have been brought in with intent to change the demographics of that town, city, constituency, area, or the entire country. These are issues that are serious issues, and we've seen the consequences of those, and something that Farage has already warned about: sectarian politics. We already have people in Parliament who are there on a sectarian mandate, and that is extremely dangerous. There are so many issues facing us, and we need to address those issues immediately. And we cannot just leave it and just wait and see. We need to act now. So, as for this comment here about being a fifth column, then what I'd like to say to this person is, please join me and tell me how arguing for democratically elected candidates is being a fifth columnist, because I'm seeing this from quite a few people. And to be honest, it's actually beginning to anger me, because if you really cared about this country, if you cared about the movement that reform has created, which is amazing, if you accept that reform is almost our last hope of rolling back this madness that we are being hurtled towards against our will, then what is important is that we have candidates who have been elected and who can get out there and fight and call every single action of this atrocious government to account every day. Not just one voice at the top, but hundreds of them throughout the country with their backing of their local members. You tell me if you think that that is undermining the party or not. Or should we all just keep quiet and then suddenly we leave it until next year, a few weeks before the local elections, and then all of a sudden all these new people have to then be selected as at the last minute and start their campaigns from zero? And what will happen after that? Will the same process be repeated at the next election? Because I don't think that this lot are going to last for 5 years, and the next election is going to be sooner than most people realize. Let me just go to the questions. Evening, David. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining me. And Jennifer Bartlett, what does this mean? I hope that my explanation, albeit a bit of a rant, does make sense, but I'm happy to answer questions on anything. And if any of you feel strongly enough and want to join me, I'll put up a number. Send me a WhatsApp and I'll send you a link, and you can join me, and you can have your say live on video now in front of everyone, because I stand by my words. I want a candidate where I live. Stand firm. I completely agree with you. Anita, I have been told that all parties stand down the candidates who were not lucky after election. But as a Reform UK are seeking to break the mould of politics, why go with this norm? No, they do not stand their candidates down. As I have already said, the candidate for the Conservative Party remains the candidate, unless, of course, he decides to stand down. That's how it basically works. And whatever the situation is, the major parties do not leave it until they decide they're going to prepare for an election to select their candidates. And even when they do, whenever that process takes place, my argument is that it should be the members, the supporters, those who have paid, those who have a vested interest in their community, in their party, in their future. They should be the ones who elect that candidate. And as I said, in my case, if I decide to stand and people locally think, oh, this guy is a loose cannon because he just won't talk about the boring stuff, because I have been told that, just stick and just repeat, like, we're going to raise the income tax to 20,000, and we're going to reduce the cost of stamp duty, and stick to the boring stuff. Well, guess what? As I said to them, in 3 months' time, I don't want to be that person who stood for that party in wherever it was, what was his name. I'd much rather be that guy who kicked off about democracy. I don't agree with him, but at least he had the balls to speak up for what he believes in. And with this regard, to quote a saying of somebody who will be unnamed, much as I have been told this, I will not shut up nor stay shut up. And the more that I am disagreed with, the more I will raise my voice, because I fervently believe that if we're going to fight this fight, we need to be armed and ready and united, and we need candidates who have been elected locally, not somebody who may, at the whim of an incompetent local manager or a stroppy regional manager, be suddenly deselected for personal political reasons. The candidate should be selected and voted in by the local members who have the right to vote, and they, and only they, barring the exception of any criminal or inappropriate behaviour, where that would be obvious that they would be requested by all to stand down, then they should be and continue to be the candidate for that area. That's how I see it should be. Another question. David, first lockdowns, next will come civil unrest, and then we'll get curfew. This is all about control, my friend. Yes, apparently bird flu is making a comeback. Let's see what happens there. It depends if Keir Starmer goes off and signs up this agreement with the WHO, giving them the right to order a lockdown. I really, really hope that they don't. And many of the announcements that we have had over the last fortnight should terrify us. And as you may have noticed, over the last 48 hours, they have begun to hammer home the horrendous state of the economy that the economy has been left in by the previous government. They are laying the foundations to backtrack on every single word in their manifesto. Prepare for stormy waters ahead. That's all I can say. We have seen the sectarian politics endangers a great deal of community action. That sectarian politicians have the ability to rally the troops. We need to be able to do the same. Would you agree that the best way to do so is to get out there via associations or group with a candidate at the head? Absolutely, that's what I want. But what I want is, I want you, the supporters, to vote in that candidate. I would like, in Northampton, for example, I can think there's where I had a meeting like the Casuals Rugby Club or places like that, who would be more than happy to have a contribution that we would make with our monthly meetings and members buying drinks and maybe making a contribution. We don't need our own premises, but we do need to have physical meetings once a month, because as whether it's myself or someone else, your local candidate needs to be face to face with you to get feedback from you, to get advice from you, support from you, because ultimately your candidate must respect you, must respect your wishes, and must fight for you. Otherwise, then you might as well just vote for one of the other wishy-washy lots who basically prostitute themselves to the highest bidder, like the Lib Dems did. I will not comply, and I will not bath, and I will bath in Lemsip. To be perfectly honest, I really, that doesn't worry me. Doesn't worry me at all. Uh, t- t- I I completely object to lockdowns, and I completely object to this culture of terrifying people. But it's about control. It is about instilling fear to divide people, division to control people. Personally, for myself, it doesn't matter either way. I've gone past that. I'm of the palliative care mindset. I don't want anything at all. It's not dying that worries me. It's life, especially if we have another term of Labour. But ultimately, that is where I stand. So I'm waiting for those who disagree with me in the comments to pop up in the chat and tell me why what I'm saying is wrong. If you agree with me, I'm happy to hear what you have to say. I'll even send you a link to join me live so that you can say what you have to say. Don't hide behind comments and then just disappear. Join me live and say why you think that my wanting you to be able to vote for your candidate is undermining the party. Because I'm not saying anything bad about the party. I'm not disagreeing with what they are doing. I stood and argued and fought for it to the best of my ability. But ultimately, it is about democracy. And we need this in place now. We can't just fob everybody off. Around the country, there are hundreds of candidates who actually just don't know where they stand. That is wrong. They should be candidates so that they can begin their campaign from now. You don't begin your campaign when an election is called, you begin your campaign now. Every day, incrementally, we need to chip away at the lie that is this administration until we tear them apart brick by brick, because we have the most insidious, treacherous, resentful, anti democratic people you could possibly imagine. They hate our country, our flag, our establishment, our independent schools. They are treacherous beyond belief. And if we are going to save our country, then we need to fight them from now. And in order to do so, we need a structure in place from now so that we have hundreds of candidates throughout the country who are in touch with their supporters, who are their voters, who are their members, so that every one of us is fighting together as a national army, fighting against this horrid Labour government who is determined to drag us back into Europe, determined to make every immigrant here a legal citizen, determined to allow them to come in on the ferry. They're already coming in on yachts, determined to drag us kicking and screaming back into Europe, to give our fishing rights away, and God knows what else. Is that what everybody voted for? And the irony is, a great number of their supporters are the Remainers who were so bitter about a Leave vote that was 51.8%. And yet they are happy to have a government with a mandate that 67% of those who voted do not want. The hypocrisy beggars belief. Janet, agree with you, Councillor Anthony Kingsthorpe. We must capitalise now on the enthusiasm endangered for Reform UK and prepare in advance for council elections and the next generation. And yes, our party must be democratised and the candidates take action to raise their profile. Thank you. I do. I'm concerned with all of the reasons that are becoming increasingly difficult to speak out about. Over the last 5-10 years, I'm sorry to say, and I'm not being alarmist here, and I'm not using any of the words that get thrown at you, by Sky News and BBC and all of those people who really actually should stop what they're doing and go and have therapy. But ultimately, we are slipping into a climate of misogyny not seen in this country for decades, indeed centuries. We have people who have zero respect for women and for children. We are seeing crime increase. Don't fall for this nonsense that violent crime is falling. No, it's just that police don't go out and deal with it. So effectively, if they don't go out and report it and issue a crime reference number and record it as an official crime, then it's not a statistic, is it? It's falling down. The very same reason that your local GP won't take appointments in advance. Because if they take appointments in advance and you can't book an appointment, then they are failing to provide a service. And that is statistical data that can be used against them. But if they don't allow you to take appointments and you have to call on the day, then there is no statistical data for you or any particular body to be able to put together, point to that surgery and say, you are failing your patients. Ultimately, it is all sleight of hand, deceit, and we know that we need to fight back now, because I don't care what anybody says. I challenge any of you, as in ladies, not that I think that you should do it, that the streets that you can't even walk down without being harassed before you get from one end to the other. And guess what? Go on X and you will see so many people, this army of people who literally throw the same words again and again and again. As a reform candidate, I've heard them all: fascist, Islamophobic, xenophobe, this, that, the other. Even my neighbour called me a fascist. But there again, he's an idiot, so I really didn't expect anything better from him. You need more activists in the culture sector, in all sectors, because our culture is if you like, the fusion of centuries of evolution to get to where we are now. And it is not just being eroded, it is being attacked and destroyed in a carefully orchestrated global agenda. Do not think for 1 minute that any group of people, a particular group of people who are diverse, who pick faults with something constantly, they will never, ever step back and say, thank you for making this concession to make our lives better. No. If you allow them this concession, they demand another concession. And if you back down because they're offended about this, they will be offended about that. This is literally the devil with 10 horns coming at our country from all different directions. And unless we take a stand and we fight against it, we will wake up one day and our country will be beyond recognition and beyond salvation. I wonder how many members were, like me, surprised to see a donor who I had never heard of a couple of weeks ago elevated to chairman, and Ben Habib now simply labelled as a member. Uh, well, I voiced my opinion there. I don't know him, have nothing against him, but I disagree with it. Completely disagree. Ultimately, prior to the election, Ben Habib was deputy chairman along with Dr. David Bull. Understand deputy chairman may need to be an MP. Not sure if Ben Habib could have also been a co-deputy chairman, even though for the time being he's not an MP. But I think that that could change very, very soon, because I don't expect our first by-election to be that far away. How long do you think it will be before the first dishonest or crooked or perverted MP is exposed? 6 months, maybe less. Now, here's the dilemma. If I put a bet on it, does that make me as bad as the Conservatives? Or if I go in the betting shop to put a bet, will it be too busy because all the Conservatives will be in there? That's me being cynical. I do apologise. But anyway, on a serious note, I think that Ben Habib needs constant, important recognition within the party, because from when the Brexit Party was resurrected as reform 3 years ago, it was Ben Habib, Richard Tice, Anne Widdecombe, Dr. David Bull, Alex Phillips, another spokesperson, who took the party to where it was just a few weeks ago. They worked tirelessly, and Ben does have a huge following. People love him when they meet him. On a personal note, when you do have Ben Habib at a meeting, if any of you become candidates in the future, speak before Ben, because when Ben goes first, he covers so much ground that you go up to speak, and 3/4 of your speech is you have to cross it out. He's very good, and he does cover ground, and he knows his facts, and he knows how to speak to people, and people trust him and respect him. And he's a very, very important figure. I'm not saying that he was treated badly or anything of the sort. I'm just a little uncomfortable with somebody making a donation and leapfrogging everyone to become CEO. Having said that, as I said, I don't know him, uh, so it's nothing personal or anything. I'm just looking at it objectively and how our detractors are seeing it. That's all. But I really sincerely hope that there is an important position for Ben within the party very, very soon. And I do hope that he will have an opportunity to stand again very, very soon, because he is needed. Each one of those who've won seats, they all have their own unique style. Nigel does, so does Richard, so does Lee Anderson. And so does Rupert Lowe as well. And he's obviously working very, very hard. But I do think that Ben Habib joining them at some point, hopefully in the near future, would literally make them a very, very significant team. But time will tell. Mazza, Anthony, I'm a Reform member. I know things aren't perfect right now, but I think in time Reform UK will tidy up the loose ends and become more professional. Get back on board. You're a great asset. Thank you very, very much. Um, this is what I'm trying to do. And I have said this, and I do mean this, that I want to see all of these wonderful people given the credit, the respect, and the privilege of being voted in by their local supporters, by their local members. And in my situation, uh, I would be happy to stand in that event only if it's going to be local members who will vote. And as I said, I will actively encourage other people to stand as well from all walks of life, because if I am elected to be the candidate for Northampton North, I want to know that it was done properly, and I want to know that everybody had different options, different people who are completely different to myself. The quiet, softly one, the loudmouth, fighter like myself, um, whoever, and it doesn't matter. And if the local people should select one of the others, I would be more than happy, and I will continue to fight the fight with them, alongside them, on their behalf, and support them, because this is about the structure that needs to be put in place really, really quickly. I'm also thinking about all of the candidates up and down the country who actually don't know where they stand at the moment. And that is not right. They need to be elected. And I do feel that we should make an act of respect to all of our supporters locally by giving them a voice. Let's be truly democratic. How wonderful for your candidate to actually have a meeting once a month where every single local member can turn up at that meeting, can ask questions, make suggestions, criticize, whatever the case may be. That is true representative democracy, and that's what I'm fighting for. Doesn't matter about whether I'm a candidate or not. I'll be happy to stand. And obviously, I can't deny what a huge privilege it would be to win and represent, Northampton North in the Houses of Parliament. How wonderful that would be! But I'm not going to sell my soul to get there. And if speaking out for what I believe in blocks me from doing so, so be it. I will not change my mind, and I will not be silenced, and I won't stop arguing for this fundamental point, because we need to put this foundation, firm foundation, this demographic route in place before we can progress. Otherwise, we are building a party on quicksand. From the minute the people voted, this party ceased to belong to the leadership. From the minute we went to the people, it is you, the people, who own this party. So I will use Lee's words, and that is, take your party back and take control of your party. That's what I believe. And thank you very, very much for the compliment. It does mean a lot to me. It really, really does. Kieran, what are your views on the Tory MP like Suella defected to Reform? Um, well, I think that she has shown that she will stand down on principle, and she did. So we have seen from what she has done before that she stands by her words. I think that her chances of going forward are very slim, not because she's not capable. On the contrary, she's brilliant. Simply because with the Tory party being culled to such a degree, the vast majority of the 110 or so that are left are from the left of the party. They are the Brexit saboteurs. They are the Boris backstabbers. They are the softly. In fact, if Suella were to defect, the remaining Conservatives might as well just merge with the Labour Party, because they're equally they're indistinguishable. They are exactly what the animals saw when they peered through the window in Animal Farm and they couldn't tell the people from the pigs. Anita, you mentioned that all of our main spokespersons have very distinct styles. As much as I admire Nigel Farage, there is a cult of Nigel started to show itself where he is the answer to all our problems. To me, this is not a positive move. The party, let alone the risk this puts him at. Look at Trump. Yes, I completely agree, and this is not picking fault with Nigel or the party or anyone. So um, let me just make that clear. But we need, if we really believe in this incredible movement that is reform, then we must believe in it as a movement powered by people, powered by those who love this country, powered by those who believe in genuine democracy, not the hypocrisy that we've had over the last few decades, where our citizenship and our democracy, or what has been left of it, has been eroded again and again and again. I am of the opinion that the people should have their say in many more issues. Yes, as I said earlier on, it's not feasible to have direct democracy. We can't have people voting every day, but people can vote in the major issues. How often would that be? A few times a month. They should have the right to do so. I don't understand why postal votes are sent out by mail, which costs a fortune, which are open to corruption. We've got one council in London that suddenly has found 6,500 votes, and they're saying, oh, it wouldn't have changed the election result. And we accept that. And yet, if you renew your passport, if you do your tax return or anything of those of that nature, you sign into your .gov account, which is very, very secure, far more secure than postal votes. I might say that because I can guarantee you, if it were done that way, the result in Rochdale when what's his name, Galloway one, wouldn't have been the way that it was. So why shouldn't most of us who have an interest have the option, but not necessarily the obligation, to be able to log into our .gov account once a week and look at what issues are coming up in the next week or the next month and be able to cast a vote through our .gov account, which should represent a voice in Parliament? Why shouldn't we be able to do that? Did any of you vote for mass migration? Did any of you ever vote for ever closer union with Europe? Did any of you vote for the Maastricht Treaty? Did any of you vote for the Lisbon Treaty? Did any of you vote for the floodgates to open in 2004? Did any of you vote for 90,000 criminals, and they are criminals, who arrived on our shores illegally, which is contrary to the law, which carries a custodial sentence? Did any of you vote to give them uh, um, amnesty to live here? Because these 1.5 million houses that Angela Rayner plans to build, well, she won't get round to it, but whatever she does manage to get thrown up, if you think that they are for the likes of you and I, then I really, really think you need to take a reality check. So ultimately, going back to the question, sorry, I diversed again. It needs to be, it's no disrespect to Nigel or Richard Tice or Ben Habib. Um, it is the fundamentals. No one person or group of people can ever be trusted with absolute power. No one person or group of people should have at their disposal the tools to cut out the masses. It is only the masses who will ensure that those who they elect to lead their country will remain accountable to them. And anybody who disagrees with that is allowing a situation where they will be completely detached from the people, and they will act unilaterally at, more often than not, the expense or to the detriment of the people. And we cannot and must not allow that. We must fight against it. Uh, that is why we need strong voices such as yours. Thank you very much. There was something else I was going to say, and I've totally forgotten now. I'm so sorry. I never have a written script, to be honest, because it just doesn't seem to work for me. Because I normally like to just roll with how I'm feeling at the time. But it does sometimes mean that I forget things, especially as I'm getting older. But more importantly, um, uh, as I said, I feel that we must not deify anybody or deify Nigel as the solution to everything. Again, this is no criticism on anyone. It's just on the structure. I believe that it is only you, the people, who can keep everyone grounded. This is really, really important. It is about democracy, because if you, the people, were genuinely consulted, if you genuinely had a voice, then we wouldn't be where we are today. The problem is this, that we are rapidly moving from perceived representative democracy to one of premeditated misrepresentative democracy, because they are rapidly changing the demographics of this country to make your voice become smaller and smaller and eventually be drowned out. So we need to act, and we need to act now. We don't have time to sit and twiddle our thumbs until the next election, even though I don't believe it's going to be in 5 years. I don't think they'll even last 4, maybe not even 3. These people are wretches, they are incompetent, and they are motivated by malice aforethought against this nation and everything that it stands for. And this is not just about whether we want income tax to go up or down 1 or 2 pence. That is purely just misdirection. This is about our country, our flag, our culture, and our freedoms. It has nothing to do with race. So, those of you who may be spying, who want to go off on X and and castigate me for what I'm saying, you might as well just go now, because ultimately I can tell you for a fact, and I don't need to, there are people who have come here, who are from India, who are from any part of the world, who love this country as much as you or I. In fact, there was a Sikh guy who went up to Leeds to protest. He went up to Leeds to protest on our behalf because he loves this country and he was angry with what they were doing. So it's not about race. It is about people who either love this country, or those people who are directly or indirectly the students of critical race theory and such like, who want to turn everything into a war against our society. And they are the people that we need to ensure are not in power. But unfortunately, many of the positions in power, in the media, in government, have been occupied by these deluded perverts who are actively and successfully convincing the masses in this country that they are the minority. You are not the minority, you are the majority. It's just that, sadly, and I do understand, many of you fear speaking up, because this is how ridiculous it has got, because you might lose your job, because your bank account may be closed, because you may be arrested. In this day and age, in our country, if somebody decides to go and say a quiet prayer anywhere near an abortion clinic, they get arrested. And yet, look what happens in the streets of London week after week after week. And our woke police have shown where their loyalties lie. And that, sadly, is a result of politicising the police. There should not be elected police commissioners who pander to the people who have absolutely no interest in our country, but their only concern is their own agenda. That needs to be cut at the root as quickly as possible. Sorry, I've just lost track of the questions here. I'm sorry. How reform is going to make money? Conservative have association clubs and Labour have unions. If we start with our local members, for example, in Northampton North, there's hundreds now. All of those members will have the opportunity to join us at a meeting. I know that they won't all come, but there'll be more than enough each month. Then between us, we can then look at fundraising collectively, because it is difficult. When I started my campaign, before the election was called, obviously we thought the election was going to be probably November, and I began to think how am I going to fundraise, because I need to get the word out there, and I need this and this and this. And I was beginning to think to speak to local businesses or so on. I'm not comfortable about approaching people asking for help. I never like asking anyone for help. So that is where I really could have done with somebody who's more skilled in fundraising and that sort of thing. And I'm sure the same applies to many of the other candidates. That's another reason that I do want to work collectively. I want the local members to have a vested interest, because whoever the candidate is locally, I want them to know they voted for that candidate. They have a claim on that candidate, if you like, or whatever the word may be, because that candidate is their candidate. They selected that candidate to fight for them, and it will be a team effort. As far as getting the necessary funding, we don't need horrendous amounts of funding. Keep in mind that Reform never spent a single penny on social media advertising. And we whipped the Conservatives and Labour. And in fact, about 3 or 4 weeks before the election ended, or before the election date rather, the Conservatives decided that they were going to launch a sponsored social media campaign to try to catch up with Reform. And I think 2 weeks later, they ran out of money and had to cancel it. We literally walked all over them, and in numbers, with the strength of feeling that we have within Reform up and down the country, because ultimately, where I've been to meetings, I've spoken at meetings in Rutland, in Leicestershire. I've met candidates from Leicestershire, all beautiful people, all standing for the right reasons, all funding themselves. And all of the people at their meeting felt the same. They were all passionate, and they were all there for the right reasons. The rest will fall into place as long as we have the structure, and we ensure that the party membership supporters are included, and that they have a voice, and that they are shown the respect that members and supporters deserve. The rest, I believe, will happen organically. For campaign, apart from donors, yes. Sorry, what's the next one? If you are in this live feed, please hit the like button and subscribe. It costs nothing. Thank you, David. Look what happened to Mussolini. Starmer thinks he has one favour. He's a fool. I do worry where they're leading us, and I worry what they're going to commit to. And I worry that he's just going to give away our fishing rights. That is, to the French, one of the greatest leverages we have with the French is fishing. is access to our fishing water. Boris was gutless. He didn't stand and fight for us. But in reality, I'm sure you all realise he was never a Brexiteer at heart. He just jumped on it and jumped on the bandwagon because he thought it would give him exposure and that Brexit would lose, and he would just fob everybody off with a speech and a few references to classical Greek, and that would be the end of it. It was his worst nightmare when the Brexit vote went against what they thought. We need you in Parliament, Anthony. So eloquent and so passionate about what you believe in, what so many of us believe in. Thank you, Janet. There are things I've been told off, and I won't say by who, for going off topic, but I'm not standing to just on the issue of income tax up or down, or just immigration. Of course, all those issues, I'm sure it's clear where I stand, but there are so many other issues that are being drowned out, and that I object to. And especially in terms of safety of women and children. And this is not because I've just gone off and subscribed to the Justin Trudeau school of virtual signaling hypocrisy, but as a father of a daughter, my daughter was special needs, is and I brought her up alone from 8 to 18. So for those of you who have or know a child of special needs, they are incredible because they can sometimes or often see the world differently, and they have this surreal intelligence that's different because the way that they pick up on things that we don't. It's incredible, but they're also vulnerable. And protecting this girl from when she was born, of course, but certainly through those teenage years. And this was before she had access to Facebook. So she was 18 in 2012, and I'd managed to keep her off Facebook until then, and just keep her on MSN, if you remember that. And I managed to keep her safe from the online predators. But in my quest to look after her, then I learned a lot about issues of safety with women. Um, Clare's Law being one of them, which I wasn't aware of before, during the campaign by Claire's parents, but obviously I was afterwards. I understood it as a father, and I've championed it. I've done my best to promote it, to create awareness. So for me, who fervently supports that mindset, to be watching our country being invaded by people who have as little respect for women as some of these monsters have, then that makes my blood boil. And I will speak up about it. And I'm sorry if people don't like it, but I'm not here to just be a parrot for anybody. I'm here to argue with about right or wrong as I see it. And I'm quite happy to be judged on what I believe to be right or wrong. At the same time, I have noticed that homophobic attacks have begun to increase. I'm sure I don't need to give you the details or examples. We cannot ignore these threats to our society, and I'm baffled how some of the most ardent supporters of these people are women. And these people have, so many of them, not all, I'm talking, the ones that I'm referring to, but many of the people arriving have so little respect for women. It is terrifying. They threaten to undermine our society from its core. And we cannot accept that. We cannot allow that. And for me, the people who defend it, the people who hide the statistics, the people who hide the reality from the public are as guilty as the perpetrators, because The perpetrators have been brought up to behave that way, but those who facilitate them have not, and they should know better. And in that regard, I am unwavered. And if that offends people, then I'm happy to offend as many people as I need to get my message across. So that's where I am, and ultimately, that's why I believe in democracy so much. See, I don't have any issue with standing to be elected, and every other candidate is a woman, and they beat the hell out of me. It's not a problem. I want the best person to stand. I don't want to engineer things so that I can be the candidate. I want the best person. I don't care whether they're male, female, young, old, whatever. Fine, the best person, as long as their motives and their moral compass is true. That's what matters. And I have tried to make this point before, and again, I offended people, but tough. The point I was going to make, for those of you who are old enough to remember Tony Blair's campaign, Tony Blair, in Northampton anyway, I don't know about other parts of the country, 8 out of 10 people who I asked in 1997, May 97, the election was, why are you voting for Tony Blair? 80% of people in Northampton voted for him because he was going to ban fox hunting. 80%. Did he really ban it? In name only? That's another argument. The point being, be very, very careful of a one policy party. Be very careful of, because bad people can take on and champion good causes to mislead the majority and get into power. And that is happening in other parts of our society. And that is an example that I would like you all to consider. It is about the moral compass of not just the entire party, but every single person within that party. Why are they standing? What are they fighting for? My friend, colleague, esteemed friend, I would call her, from one of the constituencies in Leicester, feels very, very passionate about the WASPy women. I didn't really know too much about it. I was invited to meet the WASPy women here in Northampton, and I did. I went, and they filled me in on their situations, which was quite tragic, how their lives were just suddenly turned around. One of them was 3 months away from retiring, and then suddenly it was 18 months, and then suddenly it was 3 years. And I tried to imagine, if I got to that age, how I would feel if I'd planned to retire, in October, and then suddenly it was Christmas next year, and then it will be in 3 years' time. We should all have our own reasons, or our own particular causes that we would like to champion along with the policies of the party. And we should be open about that so people can judge us based on who we are and what we are. And that's why nothing beats speaking to people and going out and being seen at meetings. It's nice to speak to people at the door, but it's often little more than just lip service and a token gesture and a quick one liner and a joke, and you're gone. How can people judge you? Maybe they'll get a feeling about you, but how can they judge you? The only way you can judge people is when you put them to the test, when you hear what they will answer to difficult questions, and then hopefully you can decide for yourselves who's right for you and who isn't. Luke Barnes, I agree with you to an extent, although I think for Argentites are afraid of really bad and offensive candidate being voted in. They don't want to lose control. No, I do understand, and I'm not saying just open the floodgates and a candidate that is going to stand to be elected should by all means be vetted, advanced disclosure, whatever it may be. But there again, you always need to keep in mind that not everything is as it seems, because I know I experienced it through my campaign. Things appeared that you supposed to have posted years ago that you don't have any clue, and suddenly it's everywhere. But at first it shocked me, and then afterwards I thought, you know what, take a jump. I know what I did or didn't do, and I know what I stand for. I'll deal with you later on. But yes, I do understand that. So it doesn't mean that it's a free for all. And yes, there's no reason why prospective candidates who want to stand to be elected locally shouldn't at first have to undergo a vetting or produce an advance disclosure, or whatever. I don't know what would be best, how they do it. And when you say a vetting, when they say a vetting company, what would the vetting company do? Um, okay, they'll ask your advanced disclosure. Um, will they check? They'll check your social media. Will they? Can they? What if you've been on social media for 15 years and you've got over 100,000 posts out there? Um, and if everything is out there, I don't know exactly how that process works, but I have absolutely no problem with it. I've no problem with a certain criteria needing to be met before somebody who wishes to put themselves up to be a candidate to be voted in can do so, and that's obviously very wise. But on that note, despite the rhetoric from the media, we've not done too bad. We have not done too bad, because I can tell you that I believe that two or three of the bad apples were there, were setups, were not genuine candidates. Um, and to actually have got so many candidates together in such a short time, um, the issues that we've had are negligible. I challenge you, look at Labour and Conservative MPs, candidates, and councillors who have been stood down over the last few years. You would actually think to yourself, when I saw the list, crikey, with all these perverts, where are actually the candidates that have done nothing wrong? There are so many, so it's not been that bad. But yes, we need to raise the bar higher than the other parties, because we have a left wing media to fight as well as the electorate or the opposition. There are a lot of very talented members whose expertise are not being used at the present time. You get very little response if you volunteer to head office or to the regional office. This has to change. Yes, I agree. Now, that is part of chain of command. I would, and there can also be issues with individuals in that chain of command, because where there is a chain, you only need one link in that chain to be incompetent, indifferent, or just basically not interested, and the whole thing falls apart. That, again, is one of the reasons that I believe that it should be the local members who vote the candidates in, so that it's not reliant on somebody further up who may have their own agenda or their own influence, but also the local members can then get together, and that would be a much, much louder voice, because it is not just about selecting the candidates and electing them in, but it's also about protecting them from being bullied or overlooked, or any number of things that can and often does happen. I'm not saying it's happened in reform, but in politics in general, I mean. Uh, Kieran, liberties and law and order. Yes, we do need law and order. I've heard that they intend to, I don't know what time frame they had set for reducing knife crime. Why is it that as of tomorrow, police have the right, indeed the obligation, to stop and search under different set criterias, and anyone caught with a knife is an immediate custodial sentence? Immediate. I think that would help, because young people who are running on testosterone and influence from the web are dying, and young people are picking up knives for whatever reason, and suddenly they're the ones taking another life. One life gone, another life destroyed, and all because the police are not policing effectively. Oh, are you? Are you? Where are you located, Janet? Are you in Northampton? I'm not sure where you are. I'd met the Northampton WASPy women in Malton. Um, all very very nice ladies, um, and I did what I could, and I do intend to continue supporting them. And beyond that, I don't really know what else I can do. Unfortunately, I was unsuccessful. I don't think that the local MP has any interest whatsoever. So it's a bit frustrating because I wish I could do more for them than I can. But that doesn't stop me voicing my opinion and voicing my support for them, does it? Kieran, why don't reforms build their own vetting system in house? Yes, I believe that they should. Again, I've not had any experience in anything like that, so I don't know how it works. I don't think it's rocket science. There are so many tools available to be able to do this, and as I said, there's time now, but there isn't time. This is why we need to be getting all anybody who wants to be considered to be a candidate to go through vetting, to stand, be elected by their members, be a candidate with the mandate of their members, so that the fight can begin from now. Because yes, the vetting process can take time depending on what they need to do, which I don't really know. John Doyle, vote reform, the only party capable of giving UK citizens what they want. I completely agree. Absolutely. That is why we need to lay our foundation correctly and true now. There is no time. There is no time. We've wasted 2 weeks already. Every single seat in the country should have an elected candidate, prospective parliamentary candidate, who has been elected by the members, so that the fight can begin from now. This is really, really important. We must maintain the momentum, and we must show the people that we are a party and not just a gang of four people who have got into parliament. Janet, Corby and East Northants, and you met Jill and Northampton. Yes, Jill, that's it. Yes, that's who I met. Yes. Anyway, it was a pleasure meeting them, and I will email. I don't know what else I can do, but I am happy to raise a voice to create awareness, whether it's in a live stream, a video, face to face, not a problem. Put a fight in front of me, and I'm happy to step in and help to fight it, especially if it's something that I believe in like this, of course. So yes, absolutely. Um, before I end, I would like to ask: is there any among you who disagree with what I'm saying? Is there anyone amongst you who thinks that my what I want is wrong or detrimental to the party? Um, and if you do, I would love to hear from you, and please tell me why you think what I want is wrong after what I've said, because I believe that I'm right. Nothing that I have said, or nothing that I'm fighting for, is for personal gain or for vanity or anything. It may very well be the very reason that I will not be the candidate next time, because hopefully other people will stand and the local people will choose whoever they think is best. It's not about that. It is because I want the best candidate, not just in Northampton North, but in every seat throughout the country, because we were effectively caught caught on the back foot at this election, and we still did well. And despite the prejudice, despite the media campaign, despite the media blackout for a big part of the election, despite votes going missing, but look how well we did. Imagine what we could do if we were organised and we really could summon the troops. And if there's nobody, if you do watch this video afterwards, this live stream afterwards, and you disagree with me, the invitation stands. I'm happy to have you join me live and state your case, because I'm quite happy to argue, to make my argument until the cows come home, and nothing and nobody will change my mind or stop me or shut me up, as you've probably gathered. Sorry, one more. Or Luke, there seems to be very little hitback against Starmer's recent key statement from Reform MPs that I've heard. A little disappointing. Possibly, yes, possibly. From my opinion, this was effectively a Marxist statement, and it should terrify everyone. It really, really should terrify everyone. A point to note, it is my business, so I know the figures. 20% of all property coming to market at the moment are ex-rental homes. And whilst people may be jumping for joy, because I know that there are landlords who are not great, just as there are tenants who are not great, overall, these properties coming for sale does not mean that those who are currently renting will be able to buy. Many of those who are renting because they cannot afford to buy, or maybe they don't want to buy, or maybe they're going to move jobs, or they're not sure about their relationship, whatever, any number of reasons. This is not good. There is not a housing problem. We have a population problem. We don't need to build 1.5 million homes on our greenbelt and lose yet more farmland. If it were down to me, I would put an end to it now. Not even a single field, not for housing, not for solar farms, not for wind farms. Italy has just banned the use of farmland for solar farms, by the way. Just to give you the figures, just dead quickly, this is what I despise about them. Why are they driving us towards inevitable famine in the future? We need to ensure that only those we invite come to this country. We need to have net migration to be below zero, maybe minus 100,000. That means 500,000 or 600,000 people each year leave, 400,000 or 500,000 arrive. I think if they're chosen carefully, that's more than enough to supply our essential services and everything that is needed in this country. All of the rest is nonsense. We don't need that many. No illegal immigrants under any circumstances. And we ensure that we work our way through all of the illegal immigrants who are here, and at some point they know that they will be removed. Priority will not be to them. They will not be put in hotels at our expense. They will be transferred to and held in secure accommodation, and housing, the priority for housing, should go to those who deserve it. And the people who deserve it are the people who live here and were born and bred here and grew up here and contributed to this country. They should come first. And in terms of volume of housing, the official numbers that we hear are that there is capacity for 1.2 million homes on brownfield sites. Depending on the reports and the type of properties, that can be as much as 2 million. That is on brownfield sites, not a single field being taken out of use. This is inner city land that's going to be from other uses that's going to be developed, redeveloped, whatever. There are also over 670,000 empty homes in England alone. Empty, derelict, unfit for use, improbate, owner moved to Australia and died and nobody knows where they are. Tax incentives to encourage the British public to renovate them and bring them back into use. And if you like, create an army of British home lovers to restore these properties, because the British public love renovating houses. And the previous Chancellor, rather than offer incentives to encourage people to buy these houses and renovate them, keep in mind that the idiot before him, George Osborne, already added a 3% stamp duty surcharge for any property that's not your designated home. This idiot all but eroded the capital gains tax allowance. And for those of you who have flipped two up, two downs, there's not a huge amount of money there anyway. It's a tight margin. So people need all the support that they can get. There is enough housing. We also need to address all of these dodgy people offshore who plough their money into our property market so that they park their ill-gotten gains into our property and leave it empty because they don't care. They just want somewhere to park their money. Hundreds of thousands of homes in London are bought and paid for and just sat there empty. Almost the entire length of the Bishop's Avenue in London was bought by Middle Eastern investors in the 1980s, and the houses are there literally falling apart. That needs to be stopped. If they want to invest here, they don't just buy houses and leave them empty. They can invest in building social housing, affordable housing, first-time buyer homes on all of these brownfield sites, and it needn't cost the government a single penny. And think about the multiplier effect from all that money being pumped into the economy: furniture, kitchens, sofas, tellies, whatever the case may be. For them not to do that, I have to question, what is it that they're really trying to achieve? Are they really that incompetent, or are they just acting out some sort of sinister game? What do you think? Bill Gates wants you to eat his poison lab-made poison. He's buying up all the farmland in the States. Well, it's the Chinese formula: bankrupt the farmers and then take their land off them. Now, think back to the King's Speech. You just mentioned it. Who was it that mentioned it? Luke. In the King's Speech, there was mention of compulsory purchasing land at a reasonable cost. That sent shivers down my spine, because I just had a vision of them leading people to believe this is all about compulsory buying land to build houses, which aren't going to be for you anyway. But the reality is that law, when passed, will be used to compulsory buy land off of farmers and put them out of business. Control the food, you control the people. We need to be very, very careful. Always keep in mind, they bring in one law and they use an excuse, create a problem, offer a solution, but the reality is something completely different. Don't forget, back in the early 90s, after the IRA bomb on the M1, John Major, either party, just as bad as each other, proposed a bill, forgotten what year it was, denying terrorists right to silence. So if terrorists said nothing in a police interview, the judge could direct the jury to find them guilty and assume it to be guilt. But by the time it went through Parliament, it changed from terrorist right to silence to criminals' right to silence. So effectively, if you bump into somebody in a pub and they punch you and you punch them back and it's a criminal hearing, and you don't trust the police officer and you don't want to give him opportunity to put words into your mouth, and you go no comment, then effectively the judge can direct the jury to find you guilty. That was step one. Not long after that, the speed camera appeared. That was the most fundamental of the lot, because for the first time since the Magna Carta in this country, we went from innocent till proven guilty to guilty till proven innocent. Both very, very, very sinister. It's no wonder that one of the first things that Tony Blair did when he got into power was to repeal hanging for treason. Because if there's anybody who's guilty of treason, it's him. Um, he's not my king. He stood by while his subjects were poisoned by Big Pharma. Uh, yeah, we need to have um, a separate stream about that, David. Not saying you're wrong, but yeah, we do definitely need to have a stream about that. So, everyone, I hope I've not bored you to death. Those of you who disagree, I'm happy to hear your thoughts. Please get in touch. Please tell me what you disagree with and why, because I'd like to know. And if you do agree with me, hopefully you understand that my efforts are not to undermine reform, they are to support it, they are to make it a force to be reckoned with. And I am of the opinion that this needs to be done sooner rather than later. We do not have time to waste. And on that note, thank you very, very much. If you have other topics that you'd like me to raise, let me know, and I would even be more than happy to perhaps arrange a meeting at some point so that we can argue things out face to face. And if you do have a bone to pick with me, then you can do so to my face. Thank you very much, David. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will be back very, very soon. Thank you very much. Good night. Bye bye.